see. All right, everybody. I hope you've been enjoying your night. It's been a beautiful day across Central Florida. We only had a few showers near the coast. But of course, all eyes have been on the tropics. I'm News 6 meteorologist Samara Kokinas here to bring you the latest developments as promised after the 8 o'clock, after we got off the set from the 7 o'clock show. We had a few things to get underway, and then now I am here to give you all the information that we have right now. So as we look at the 8 p.m. advisory, hi Tiffany, it's good to see you. At the 8 p.m. advisory, this is just an intermediate advisory, so basically it's not a track update. I'll show you that track in just a minute. But basically what we're looking at is Tropical Storm Ian with 45 mile per hour winds gusting up near 60 miles per hour. The pressure is now 1,002 millibars. It was 1,003 during the 7 o'clock show, so that 8 p.m. advisory has shown a little bit of a drop, moving west at 14 miles per hour. So it slowed down just a tad bit. It was moving west at 16 miles per hour in the 5 o'clock update. So notice that with this particular storm, basically what's happening is we're starting to see deeper convection. So you can see that little blow up right there above the tropical storm icon. And basically that's that deeper convection that we're looking at, which is going to show more signs of strengthening over the next 24 to 48 hours. You're really going to notice that trend, and it's going to start to organize better. So once we get that area of low pressure that we can really focus in on, our model data is going to basically latch onto that and really start to come together, especially in the later days of the forecast cone, which is still very broad at this point. So without that shear there kind of, keeping things from really starting to strengthen, now we're looking at a more favorable environment to see rapid intensification occur over the next couple of days. So here's the cone. Let me show you the 5 p.m. track update. Even though this says an 8 p.m. advisory, it does update it with the current information within the storm, but the actual track advisory has not changed yet. It'll change. We'll have another update coming up at 11 for that. But as we put this in motion, you'll notice that it moves still to the south and west of Jamaica coming into tomorrow. And then as we get closer to Monday, we're already looking at the intensification happening. So we're looking at tomorrow late day going into Monday, this becoming a hurricane. And then from there, it's going to continue to move closer to and possibly pass over or just to the west of the western tip of Cuba. Now, but right before it does that, it actually looks like it's going to strengthen even more to a Category 3 hurricane, and then continue that strengthening process, moving into the really warm waters of the southeastern Gulf before getting closer to Florida. So what we're looking at here, I know that there have been a lot of questions concerning why are we looking at a Category 4 storm going down to Category 2 before it makes landfall. And that is simply because it's going to be moving into an environment that won't be as favorable for those conditions to be maintained. We're going to see a southeastern shear basically start to break that storm down a little bit, but it's still going to be a very powerful storm once it makes landfall. Notice how broad that cone is, folks. So when we look at the broad end of it, that 4 to 5 day outlook, there's still quite a bit of uncertainty in this forecast. And until we really get more model data in, which the hurricane hunters are still going to be very, very busy over the next 24 hours. Basically, what we're looking at is that uncertainty. So you'll notice that most of Florida is in that cone. A good portion, I would say over 3/4 of the state, excluding Miami-Dade and looks like just to our south, going into around West Palm area, it looks like to be out of the cone at the moment. But again, with the uncertainty in the forecast, all that could still change. So as we look at this a little bit, I'm going to do a zoom in so you guys get a really, really close look at the progression of this storm, and of course a bigger look at it once it gets closer to anywhere from the Big Bend all the way down the west coast of Florida. So when we look at the storm, again, rapidly intensifying as it moves into that favorable environment, we're talking about no shear, and we're talking about very warm water, okay? possibly reaching that category 4 status by Tuesday afternoon, if not before. And then it progresses. And as it progresses, notice that the track has again shifted to the west, all because of the models continuing to show a westward trend. So it's a good thing for us, but it's not necessarily the best thing for the Panhandle as well as Alabama and Georgia right now. So, but again, I want you to focus not on the center of the track, but the entirety of the cone, because basically the center of the storms has the potential to possibly follow the Euro trend, which is the far eastern line that you see moving across southern Florida. And then you also have that far western line. So there's the potential that it could move further west, taking those stronger winds and impacts further away from central Florida. So for now, though, you'll notice that the shift over the past, I would say 24 hours has definitely been very, very visible in terms of where we're showing this potential landfall being, okay? So it went from putting it in the Fort Myers area, Naples, Fort Myers, to Tampa last night at 11, and now it's continued to shift that a little bit further to the north. So if this particular system continues to shift to the west, we're going to see less and less of central Florida in that cone, and a lot less of the state being in that cone as well. However, again, this will continue to shift over the next couple of days. I think Monday we're going to get a better grasp as to what exactly we could see here in central Florida as far as impacts are concerned. So let's see here. I'm going to try to get to a few questions here in a few minutes. I just want to go through a little bit more information before we really get going here. So let's look at the model data. All eyes have been on these models, folks, and trust me when I say it's something that my team and I constantly look at. So when we put the models in motion, you'll notice that they're very tight together to a certain extent. Okay, they're not that real thin line where all are like packed together. Just because once we start to see more of an organization of this system, then that's when they start to get closer together. Until then, they're still going to be a little bit far apart, but they're all in pretty good agreement as to keeping it to the south and west of Jamaica. Still, impacts will be felt there as well as in the Caymans, and of course over Cuba, heading into the start of the work week. So when we look at this, though, you'll notice that it'll start to spread out a little bit. So as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, southeastern Gulf are still kind of closer together, but then we get into that longer range, and that's where they all start to spread out. So we're still looking at a decent spread, with the Euro being on that yellow area. So it's on the eastern half of where that cone is, all the way back to the GFS, which is the far left of the cone. So everything else is kind of in between. So that shows us that, yes, there's still quite a bit of uncertainty, and with that can come a lot of change. So you might see some shifting back to the east. You might see shifting back to the west, and it has a lot to do with the environment that it moves into. Kind of like what I showed you with the track model, showing it weakening a little bit to a category 2, which is still a very strong storm, folks. I don't want you to think I'm downplaying that by any means. But what we're looking at is just the environment not being as favorable to keep that category 4 status going all the way up to making landfall, kind of like what it did with Michael. Michael was a very strong storm, but it didn't have anything to steer it. So it just kind of rammed in there and really moved in quickly. So rapidly intensifying very quickly as well. So there, in this instance, we do have something, a couple of things kind of that'll push and pull that system as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to give us a different setup for this particular storm. And that's why, again, the models are so broad. Once they start to consolidate, of course, that cone will continue to shrink, and we'll be able to give you guys a better look as far as the impacts are concerned. So what we are looking at basically here is the upper level steering pattern. So we have this trough that is going to dig deep into the United States. The thing about it is that particular system is going to help pull this system to the north. And then what happens from there is, as that system moves to the mid-Atlantic. It kind of starts up to the eastern side. What happens is, depending on the strength of that system and, of course, how fast it's moving, will determine help determine rather where this system could possibly go. So what we're looking at is if it can maintains this particular setup, like what we're looking at on this particular model, it could come closer to the coastline. Whereas if it's a little bit delayed, like if it stays moving westward longer before making that northward turn, what we're looking at is it kind of missing that ride and it going a little bit further away from the west coast of Florida. So that, of course, that's what the GFS is kind of following at this point, is that later ride on the system. But the thing about it is it then, of course, takes it closer to the panhandle going into Alabama and the Big Bend area of Florida. So it'll definitely be something that we watch when we get more model data in there. I'm going to take my image off of here just to show you. We have had 4 completed missions with the Hurricane Hunters, and they do have another mission tonight at 10:45 that will be with the U.S. Air Force Teal 71. All of the information that we've received today has really kind of helped these models get a better grasp as to what exactly is happening with the environment surrounding Ian. And the thing about it is, as we go into the other recon flights, basically these Hurricane Hunters information that they bring back from the storms, from the storm that it's in, which is Ian, will help bring more data in as far as the steering flow around Ian, as well as the deep level layer trough that I just showed you over the eastern United States early next week. So those being some really big players in this forecast, it'll be information that we watch very closely as it comes in. Also, as the structure of that cyclone improves and it develops that inner core that we keep mentioning, the models will then latch on to that inner core and have a better consensus as to where it's going to be headed, how, the strengthening process, and exactly where it'll be come later in the forecast. But again, until then, that forecast cone does remain fairly large. So here's the last look at the latest recon flight that went out at 5, and you can kind of just see it moving around out there, basically trying to get snippets of the environment, which are basically the upper level patterns at this point, because that particular aircraft flies higher than the other one did at, I believe it was about 11 or 12 o'clock earlier today. Let me go back to that graphic and I can tell you specifically which one it was. 11:45, there we go. Or 10:45. Let's see. It took the times off. So it was earlier today. I want to say it was about 11 o'clock this morning, or possibly a little bit before 11. The Teal 72 went in, and then we had the NOAA 49 that went in at 1:30, and basically the NOAA 43 went in last at 5 o'clock. So it was just gathering data about the particular environment with this particular storm. But like I mentioned, because it does remain fairly disorganized, we are starting to see signs of it improving and showing a little bit more organization as we see that structure kind of come together with the lack of shear that was once there, keeping it kind of disorganized. We're starting to see it now come together a little bit better with that deeper convection showing in the system. So we are anticipating for this particular storm, as it moves into those really warm waters and with hardly any shear there, we're expecting it to strengthen, and it will happen to do that in a very rapid manner as it approaches the western tip of Cuba. So that will be something that we watch, especially as it moves over the western tip of Cuba, the interaction that it could have if it does move directly over the western tip, or if it moves just to the west of it. So we'll definitely be watching that as it progresses over the next couple of days. But yeah, and basically all of the data that came in from the flights earlier do suggest that the center could be reforming slightly west of the previous estimates of the initial motion. So basically what we're looking at is still kind of some uncertainty there for the initial motion of this storm. So that's why there's still a lot of uncertainty in the longer range of things. I'm going to put this back on the track for those just joining us tonight, so you can kind of get a better idea of what we're talking about, that westward shift still taking place tonight because of the models all kind of coming together and showing more of a westward trend. Even the Euro that was over South Florida just yesterday has now shifted and kind of brought it closer to Central Florida, and that's why we're still seeing a big portion of the cone incorporating Central Florida and even areas to our south, and then all of Northeast Florida going back into the Panhandle and the Big Bend area. So it's just one of those things where, we have so many different elements in play that it'll be something to really watch and to see how it all kind of forms together to show exactly all the model consensus. So I'm going to try to look at some of these comments or questions that you guys may have for me tonight. Let's see. We're talking about oh man, it's not working. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to scroll through all of these. Hi, Sharonda in Daytona Beach. Chrissy, hi in Claremont. Let's see. Watching from Lake County. Hello from Kissimmee. So the impacts that we could potentially see in Central Florida, it's going to be one of those things that come together a little bit closer on Monday, and we'll be able to more accurately tell you. But increasing rain, possibly some windier conditions, obviously just depends on exactly where this particular storm sets up in the Gulf and whether or not it's going to move back to the west or come a little bit closer. Of course, that would change things dramatically, but preparations like getting your lawn furniture out of your yard and like securing it somewhere safe so it doesn't blow around, are kind of good things that you can do, especially with the weekend being so nice the way that it is. Let's see. Will there be any Sharknadoes? No. No, Jeff. Katie Wheatley asks, what will it look like on Thursday for Cocoa Beach? Well, it's really going to depend exactly where the system is situated, but we're looking at the timeline for potentially seeing the increasing rain chances late Tuesday going into Wednesday and Thursday. So I think for the most part, as we head into Thursday night going into Friday, we'll start to see things improve, but specifically, again, that'll be all about where the system sets up and how close it comes to the coast. If it's really close to the coast, of course, we're going to feel greater impacts being on that eastern side of the storm, or the northeastern side of it as well, potentially. It's one of those things where we could be looking at some severe weather. That's why we're asking everybody to just kind of be prepared right now. With the majority of the state still in the cone, it's imperative that you just have those preparations already kind of ready to rock and roll. That way, if there is that severe weather element, you'll be able to deal with it a little bit easier than having to rush out last minute. I know a lot of people have been saying, the shelves are already, the water is pretty much out. A lot of people have been getting quite a bit of gas as well. And I really, I don't like for people to panic by a lot of things because, like I said, there's so much uncertainty in the forecast right now with the models still being kind of out there, and that cone, again, being relatively large, that, if we end up in a better situation and we don't see as many impacts, that's great. I just feel for those along the Panhandle of where the potential this storm could go if it continues to shift back to the west. But again, I want to address this because I continue to see this question come up. Sorry, I was just trying to look through. Will Ian be a danger to Jamaica? Andy Watson said that on YouTube Live. So what we're looking at, Andy, is potentially tropical storm conditions for Jamaica, and I believe the rainfall estimates are anywhere from Jamaica to the Caymans, anywhere between 4 to 8 inches, with isolated maximums up to 12 inches of rain. And then for west and central Cuba, it looks like, if you have family there, definitely an area to watch and monitor very closely over the next day. They could get anywhere, I believe, up to 6 to 10 inches of rain, with isolated maximums up near 14 inches of rain. So the Keys are even potentially going to be impacted in terms of rain. So we're looking at 1 to 3 inches of rain for the Keys potentially, with isolated maximums up near 5 inches. So Miami. Angel says, what about Miami, Florida? It looks like right now, as far as the cone is concerned, Miami is out of that area. Naples is still in that particular zone to be aware and watching over the next couple of days. But it looks like Miami-Dade doesn't look to be in the cone as of right now. But the thing about it is there will still be anywhere between about 1 to 4 inches of rainfall for that. Now, a lot of this question, I wanted to go back to it really quick. A lot of people have been asking, why has it been going from a category 4 to a category 2? And I know I addressed that previously in other live hits that I did today, or the other one, I should say. But basically what's happening is, when that storm moves into the southeastern Gulf and then progresses to the north, folks, it's going to be over really, really warm water. So it has that potential to grow and strengthen. But then as it gets closer to the coastline and it hits that 2 status, that potentially category 2 status in the late forecast, so by Thursday afternoon, what we're looking at is it moving into a less favorable environment. So we're looking at some southeastern shear that could help kind of bring things down a little bit before making an impact on land. But the thing about it is, a category 2 storm is still a powerful storm, and one that definitely needs to be prepped for, despite where you are in the cone. So, but I think for the most part, we're looking at Miami-Dade being in the clear for now, unless models come back and everything starts to shift back to the east. So it's, again, this is one of those things where we'll start to see things kind of go back and forth over the next couple of days until this system really, it gets locked in tight with the model data. So let's see. Hello from Leesburg. Hello. Will the storm be out of the area by Saturday next week? I think for the most part, yeah. We'll start to see improvement by Friday. That was from Sharonda. Let's see. Any power outages on the east coast of Florida if it does move more east? I mean, you know, and this question is from Parker on Facebook Live. Any power outages on the east coast of Florida if it does move more east? Yeah, there's always that potential, Parker, for sure. Just because, you know, when you're dealing with a storm and, you know, you have the excessive wind, I mean, we've even seen in our day-to-day thunderstorms here where people have had power outages because, you know, lightning strikes a particular area, or, you know, a zone that is powering a grid, you know. So yeah, there's always that potential. I would definitely have backups like batteries for your flashlights or lamps, or even the solar powered ones are pretty cool too to have on hand, and candles, of course, but always be careful using them. Mention satellite. VI Butterfly 47 on YouTube Live is saying, what about Georgia? Nobody's been reporting on Georgia. Actually, I just actually mentioned southern Georgia because it is in the cone for now, because of the forecast being extended through Thursday afternoon until we really get a grasp as to where this system will be headed. Of course, it's not going to extend any further north. It possibly could by, I believe, 11 o'clock tonight, so we'll be watching for that. But on the current path, if it does make its way in, which, of course, I never want you guys to focus on just the center of this track. It's the entire cone that we're looking at, because that center of the storm has the potential to move as far east as that edge of that eastern cone, or the right side of the cone, and as far west as the western half of that cone. So, but the potentials would definitely be some heavy rain, but and again, the wind, definitely another factor. As far as storm surge is concerned, we're looking at the west coast of Florida, definitely seeing some storm surge potential. So, higher than above average tide. When you get your tides coming in, it's going to be higher than above average by about anywhere between 1 to 3 feet, I believe, are the estimates right now. So, again, that could change as well, depending on exactly the arrival of the storm and how big it gets out over the Atlantic, or over the Gulf, and then moving into that not so favorable environment late in that forecast period will help with that. But I do believe that storms are just still going to be a pretty big deal all up and down the west coast of Florida into the Panhandle as well. So let's see, I can get to a couple more before I have to. Des on Facebook Live said, do flights get canceled in Orlando? It really depends on the airlines, whether, how soon they start to make those calls as far as the flights are concerned. So as of right now, nobody needs to cancel any plans or anything like that. So it will be one of those things to definitely monitor if you do have a flight coming in or going out of Orlando, even Sanford, Melbourne, and Daytona Beach as well. Speaking the truth on YouTube Live, is Orlando in risk, potentially Osceola County? Yeah, as of right now, because all of Central Florida is still in that broad cone that we're looking at, we're definitely we still have the potential to see, some impacts from Ian over the next couple of days. But again, we have a good amount of days. I mean, it's Saturday night, right? And we're talking about starting to possibly see impacts late Tuesday going into Wednesday, more so on Thursday. So it'll definitely be something to watch, especially as more model data comes in from the hurricane hunters. And as we get more information, of course, those models will be able to grasp a little bit tighter as to what this particular system is going to do when it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. And again, I'm going to take this off and I'll show you hurricane hunter missions that are going out. We have another one tonight at 10:45, and then another one tomorrow morning or overnight at 1:30 in the morning. So of course, all of this information will be critical in determining exactly what the system is doing, as well as the upper level pattern that is going to be driving and steering the system itself. So let me show you again another close-up here. There we go. So yes, that cone does extend into southern Georgia, as well as portions of Alabama, going back into the Big Bend of Florida around the Panhandle, and then pretty much all of central Florida, getting down there to about Lake Okeechobee or so. So it looks like Miami-Dade is good to go, and parts of Broward as well, but I wouldn't completely rule out all of Broward County yet. Let's see. I notice I'm seeing some comments about the Euro model taking it more east. Yes, let me put the models back up here again so I can show you. So the spread in the models when we get closer to Florida. So the far eastern model that you see there in the yellow is more the one favoring more of the Euro. That's the Euro trend, right? And then back to the west, we're looking at the GFS. So because of these model differences, that's why the spread is so large. But But what I have noticed over the past 24 hours or so is that all of the models, of course, are starting to take on that westward shift, whereas originally the Euro had it across South Florida and the GFS was bringing it as a bullseye into Central Florida. All of that is beginning to kind of trend to the west. So it'll definitely be interesting. And I'll take my face off of this image so you can see it a little bit better. There you go. It'll be very, very interesting to see when the organization gets a little bit better with Ian, the structure of the cyclone improving, and it develops that inner core, and we see rapid intensification really starting with that system. The models are going to latch on to that inner core before rapid intensification happens, and then the model guidance will start to be a little more together. So all of these models are going to start to kind of come together a lot like what they do in the beginning. Let me show you. Even though there's still a decent I wouldn't call it a big spread in the models right off of the initial motion of this particular storm. There is still some uncertainty with it. They're not as close together to look like a cable wire or anything like that. But notice that it does get a lot broader moving closer to Florida. So what we will start to see with the additional model data being inputted into this model or into all of these models, and the desired output is basically going to be a closer consensus as to where everything is going to be going. So until all of that happens, until that that inner core really gets latched onto, we start to see it really coming together. That's basically what we're looking at. We're going to look at, again, a lot of uncertainty in the latter portion of the forecast versus the initial. So let's see, what else do we have here? I'll take a couple more. My goodness, these move so quickly. There's so many people. I'm glad everybody's on. Jamie,
yeah.
I have a football question. When are the Buccaneers playing the Packers?
In the afternoon, 4:25 tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Alrighty. Daniel, no, it won't impact the game. You're good to go. They're playing in Florida, right? Oh, okay, obviously. I know these games are happening, but I don't know exactly where because I don't always recall. No, I mean, I know they're on Sunday, but I mean as to the location, whether home or away. Let's see. Destin, Fort Walton in the area, yes. STL, Tony, yes. So yeah, Destin, Fort Walton area, all in that Big Bend area. Here, I'll put it back on the cone for you guys one more time before I head out of here to go make some more graphics and to do some more updates for the news and for another Facebook Live I have tonight and a YouTube Live. But there you go. That cone still incorporating a good portion of Florida. So why do you think, let's see, Pensacola, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on this. Yes, Jason, it's one of the Jason 007 on YouTube Live for sure. Pensacola will definitely have to keep an eye on this as well, especially with the trends, shifting a little bit more westward like they have been. If it continues with that trend, definitely regardless, just go ahead and get your preparations done. That way it's one less thing that is sitting on your shoulders. So, all right, guys, I got to head out. Have to go make a few more graphics for the shows tonight, and I will be back here at about 10:30, 10:45 tonight, probably 10:30, a little bit closer or a little bit earlier, so I'm not as close to the 11 o'clock show. And then we'll have a track update coming up tonight at 11. It won't be during my next live hit. This will basically just kind of be to reinforce a lot of the information that we do still have. And if we get any more information, of course, I'll be here to give it to you in that live session. And then from there, we have the 11 o'clock news, and we will have that track update then, as well as on our social platforms, and as well as clickorlando.com. So thanks so much for joining us tonight, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful evening and enjoy the rest of the weekend.